All right, welcome in everybody. It's another episode of the Monty and Murdy College Football Show. Monty, we've made it to episode 20. Been a rough ride for us so far, but hey, we got an exciting week in college football. We had an exciting week in Champ Week. Lots of exciting games happened up for it. Before we get into that, we're gonna roll. I do have one thing to bring up. We are now a member of the SportCoin network. SportCoin is a new sports network. It helps fans find sports content while helping content creators grow. If you're tired of listening to the same kind of big networks, ESPN, all that stuff, Google search them, www.sportcoin.network. You can find it there. There's a whole bunch of it. We're going to be one of the pages listed there. So we're a part of the SportCoin network, trying to help the show grow a little bit. Monty, what's up, man? How are you, buddy?
Go invest you some SportCoin. Go get you some. And I'm good. Episode 20. It's like a landmark. Our first little kind of real landmark. I guess we could have done 10, but 20 is kind of a big deal, especially after conference championship week. We got through that.
Yeah, we survived through it. I don't know.
Some of us did, but
some of us did. There was a hot take. RIP. We lost this week, but following the champ recap that we're going to give y'all, we're going to deep dive into the new college football playoff. We have the official seeding for y'all. We'll be sure to give y'all our takes on it. I'm sure Monty has some pretty hot ones for us. We'll finish up with, we got football this week, man. We got America's game this weekend. Army versus Navy. We'll touch on that. And then we'll also touch on some of the stuff, how we're going to end up constructing the show, following, National Signing Day with the recruits and obviously the big transfer portal stuff. We'll deep dive into it a little bit later. Just let y'all know, quick heads up, we're not going to really dive into it until really the off season. We're going to kind of focus on the 2024 season here, finish it out, and then we'll touch on some of the transfer portal stuff just because it's a fluid situation. What I tell you this week may be wrong. It could very well change the following week. So really we'll just hit it after the season, try to give y'all an update there. And then we'll always close up the show with our dubs and duds of the week. So, Monty, let's dive in, man. We had Boise State taking on UNLV in the Mountain West Championship. Boise State ended up winning 21-7. Monty, what were your thoughts watching this Friday night game?
Well, obviously, for those who may or may not have watched this game, Boise State went up early, actually, 21-0 in the first half, right? And the final score was 21-7. So they didn't struggle with UNLV by any stretch, but they held them off in the sense of, they just, let them score one touchdown. And in the second half, that was it. Ashton Jeanty scored that last touchdown with 29 seconds in the second quarter, or in the first half. Another great showing by Ashton Jeanty. Obviously I've been pretty vocal about it. I think you agree. I think most of the fans of college football agree that Ashton Jeanty is probably the most deserving of the Heisman. Especially the last 2 weeks, I've had a lot of discourse about Travis Hunter versus Jeanty, and you see both sides. And I don't want to discount Travis Hunter, right? Is he deserving of a Heisman? Yeah, I just think Ashton Jeanty is more deserving. 32 rushes, 209 yards, and a touchdown in the game against UNLV to win the Mountain West Conference. I think he's 130 and some change yards short of the all-time single-season rushing record behind Barry Sanders. Obviously, he did in 11 games, but I digress.
A little bit different college ball we're playing, at least season structure-wise.
Right, but nonetheless, it's like, yeah, he's gonna do it. I would wager, he, like I said, he needs 130 yards. I think even if they do end up losing their playoff game, I think he'll still break that. He's averaging like 190 yards a game or something like that. I don't know the exact number, so don't quote me. But all around, that Boise State took control of that game from the jump and just held UNLV off. For lack of a better term, and granted, it was a home game. It was literally at the Blue Field in Idaho, so it was probably a pretty packed house. I didn't get to watch the actual game. I watched the in-depth highlights of it. I was pretty busy with watching other games, and then obviously family still in town. But what I did see, I watched a lot of Ashton Genty, and it was very impressive.
Yeah, and
per usual.
Yeah, one note I had, man. So Maddox Madsen, he actually I thought he played a really good game in this one. Numbers don't really jump off the stat sheet, but I mean, I thought he made a couple of good throws, a couple of good deep balls that really, kind of helped this Boise State jump out to that big lead. And like you said, I mean, they kind of called the dogs off a little bit in the second half. The game wasn't ever really felt like it was in question in the second half. Boise State's defense was playing pretty lights out. They struggled. They made a UNLV offense, with Brennan Marion and the go-go offense. Obviously, they figured out some stuff, to be able to combat that. And, UNLV really didn't have a great day offensively. I mean, it wasn't terrible. Put up 327 yards. Really ran the ball well. Their passing game is what struggled. I mean, they put up 1 yard short of Boise State. They ran the ball for 217, but 110 passing yards. And then obviously the turnover difference, with UNLV giving up the interception, and then Boise State.
Well, then couldn't put the ball in the end zone, obviously, except for one time. So, I mean, at the end of the day, obviously, X's and O's, that's the difference, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Put points on the board.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we can talk about it all day. And there is a team that we're going to touch on a little later who's struggling to put points on the board, and that ended up being what cost them. Man, got anything else on this one? I mean, it's not really much. We kind of expected, both of us predicted Boise State to win this game. We both kind of figured they would handle them probably a little better than they did earlier in the season, just with it being a home game for Boise instead of, being played at UNLV. Kind of what we expected here.
Yeah, and I mean, it's this year's. I mean, Boise State's just head and shoulders above the Mountain West. The rest of the teams in the Mountain West this year, but it kind of reminds me of the Kellen Moore age, and it is. I don't want to take anything away from. Well, definitely not the O-line because they're a big part of it, but not from the coaching. Spencer Danielson's a hell of a head coach. He was a tight ends coach there for a while. Hell of a head coach. But this season, most would agree that, it was off the back of Ashton Genty, which shows, the deserving trophy, in my opinion. But yeah, I just think this team's head and shoulders above the rest of the Mountain West. And obviously it showed. Their only loss being to the number one team in the country. So, well deserved.
I was looking over, Genty stats, obviously, with all the Heisman debate going around. I was looking over it, man. It's, some of the stuff he does, Travis Hunter has lights out. So, he's got some huge number of games, all that stuff. What stood out to me is what Genty does on his bad days, right? On Genty's bad days, he's still rushing for over 100, which is...
Well, and a lot of those games, too, that are his bad days, he got pulled in the second half because they didn't want him to get hurt, and they were blowing people out. So there was that one game against... I don't want to get it wrong. I could probably pull it up, but he had 130 yards and no touchdowns. It was like one of the first games. I'll be able to find it here in just a moment. But, that's considered one of his bad days, and it's not a bad day. It's just that they pulled him, and because they didn't need it. And, why as a coach would you want literally the guy that basically has put this team on his back? It is, I believe, week 4. Okay, it's against Portland State. So an FCS team, 11 carries, 127 yards, and no touchdowns. So he averaged 11 and a half yards a carry, right? 11 rushes, 127. And I guess that's, he didn't play in the second half. That's he didn't play in the second half. And so it's like, people are like, I guarantee if he played all 4 quarters in every single game, he would already have that record. That's hypothetical, so I won't, make that claim fully. But I'm just saying, if I were to... If I were a betting man, I would bet that.
Okay.
But I don't bet, so.
No, you can't. You're in Texas, so no sports betting yet.
Not yet, yeah. We'll see.
If you got one of them VPNs, I'm just saying. Either way. All right, moving on. Next game, Big 12 championship. Iowa State versus Arizona State in a game that we said, the Boise State game was never a question. No, this one was really never a question.
It was close early on, but man, watching Iowa State just totally implode.
Yeah.
And what did I say? If they let Scatterbo have his way, the doors could have been blown wide open, and they were.
Uh-huh.
So, I mean,
Cam Scatterbo, he went for 170 yards and 2 touchdowns, averaging 10.6 yards per attempt with a long rush of 53 yards. Man.
That's a first down every time he got the ball. That's averaging a first down every time he gets the ball.
Yeah. And that's a really easy way to play offense. If you can turn around and hand it off, and then he goes for a first down.
Yeah, every play.
Yeah.
They talk about, growing up, right? All you need is 4 yards of play.
Yeah.
You get 4 yards of play, you get a first down every 3 plays, and you just get a first down every play.
Yeah, that's way easier. Way easier. But, man, I was impressed with Sam Levitt in this game. I mean, he played solid for him, and, seeing what Arizona State, like I said, they're one of the hottest. They were one of the hottest teams coming into this game. That's why I had to go with them. And man, I just didn't see a Matt Campbell team beating themselves the kind of way that this Iowa State team did. Kind of out of character for them.
Yeah, I mean it's the same thing that happened to them in what was that, 2019? I believe they played Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship. I mean, they just imploded. It's the same thing. I mean, it's the same thing that they did back then. It showed signs that it's Coach Campbell and his Iowa State team on a big stage like that when it matters most. It's like they fall apart and they forget how to coach their guys. The players forget how to play football. Because you can't blame Matt Campbell for his guys fumbling. I think it was 2 possessions in a row, and then Rocco Beck having an intercept. Like, you just can't. Like, at some point, you can scheme it up, but someone's got to execute it. And if you're not executing, and then you're not calling right plays late, and then you're not being able to stop the one guy that you need to stop, it turns into that 45-19 route. So
that third quarter was rough. I mean, Arizona State came out at half.
Oh, and my dad was in town watching this game, so
I can imagine.
You can imagine, yeah.
Yeah, it was man, they So I do have a question. I did make a note about it, and I wanted to get your opinion. Does this raise some question marks? Iowa State's famous. They originated Jim Dole, right? The defensive coordinator.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Originated kind of the 3-3-5. He's like the head of the 3-3-5. Does this kind of raise some question marks when you're facing a physical run attack like Arizona State about the 3-3-5 and how it's able to combat that? I don't know. That's kind of a lot.
Are you talking specifically scheme or coach?
I'm talking specifically scheme, just because whenever it's in its base formation, that is a 6-man box.
Because the weird thing about
I know they branch it in. They'll bring in like a stand-up guy and bring him into the box, make it a 7-man. But what I noticed is like they have, at least in that game, I thought that maybe they would switch up, bring in that guy a little bit more to be kind of like that stand-up rush end. But for a lot of it appeared to me like they were just going with 3 down linemen.
So I'll talk specifically on this game. So I think early on when Iowa State was actually keeping it close, what did Arizona end up? So they were basically, I don't want to say stonewalling Scatterbo, but they were keeping him at bay early on, and they were keeping it close. And then what happened? Arizona State took the top off, and they scored that long touchdown and so I think that later on when Scatterbo and Arizona State's run game started exhausting Iowa State, they were too afraid to honor it too hard like they did in the first half because they were afraid of that big play to happen. The problem is that the big plays were still happening in the run game, and there was no scheme change.
Yeah.
From first half to second half. From first half to second half, but hell, even you could argue third quarter to fourth quarter, when everything kind of was slowing down to an extent for Arizona State, because they didn't need to score a lot more points. They were already up by a lot. I just didn't see any. There were no corrections. There was nothing changed, and I think that they were, from what I saw, they were afraid of that one thing to happen again, because those big plays, whether it be that long one off the over the top or the Scatabo where he broke like 6 tackles in one play, those are gut punches, and those are not drive killers, momentum killers. And so I think they were afraid of that. Obviously, I'm not a coach there, and they make way more money than me to do that, but it just seems like they were afraid to load the box too much. They still did in some instances, but they were afraid to just go all in on the run game, because of what happened in the first half.
Yeah, and I get that. Game. Yeah, and I understand. I mean, at some point, you're getting hit for 10 yards a clip. You know what I mean?
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
It's like at some point, you're just like, hey, if our corners get beat, we just at least can't let them.
And the past few years too, Iowa State's defensive backfield has been well over par.
Oh, man.
And so, I would feel. I think that I thought that the coaches would feel more comfortable putting those guys out on an island, but I mean, obviously this game, like I said, they imploded, and it just wasn't their day.
Which, I mean, I don't know. It's kind of tough. We're talking about they're not making adjustments in the fourth quarter, and you're like, well, I mean, Arizona State already had 45. It was 45-10. Going into the fourth quarter. So it's like, at what point are you like, hey, we're just kind of moving on? It's like, I understand. This is the big playoff spots on the line. You're going to try to play it down to the last rep. At some point, you're going to have kind of at least a little. Your players have a realistic, perception of what they're capable of leading and then come back.
Yeah, and I think it was the culmination. That game overall was the culmination of Iowa State imploding and then Arizona State virtually playing lights out. I mean, like that. I don't want to mispronounce his name, but that Xavier Gulori. I think it's Gulori. I don't know for sure, but he's number 1.
Okay.
The wide receiver for Arizona State. But the catches he was making, like the dimes that what is it, Levitt?
Yeah, Sam Levitt.
I'm horrible with names. I'm sorry. He was throwing dimes over people. Like, there was a lot of plays where Iowa State's defensive backs had like good positions on balls. It was just that the throw was perfect and the catch was perfect. And there's certain times in football where as a DB, there's nothing you can do. You play the best. You literally can play the play perfectly, but there's just nothing more you can do, and they still score. And that's basically what happened, especially in that third quarter when Arizona State really started pulling away. And so, yeah, like I said, between the Iowa State team doing what they do in big games and Arizona State being the hot team right now, 45-19.
Yeah, 45-19. That's a tough one. Arizona State coming into the playoff with some momentum here. Let's go ahead and touch on the ACC championship. A good one, man. Unfortunately, my Mustangs didn't pull it off. Close. Clemson ended up winning 34-31 on a last-second walk-off field goal. Beat SMU. And, man, that was a heartbreaker, especially how SMU started this game. I mean, it almost looked like they were a little shell-shocked for the moment. But once they were able to, gather themselves and, they let it come back, went and tied it here, with – hang on. What do you got on this game?
Did you say they daboed themselves?
No, I think I said they imploded on themselves. Early on.
Did you say dabo or gathered?
Gathered. Oh, yeah, they gathered.
I thought you said Clemson daboed themselves. I'm like, well, yeah, that's pretty much what happened. Because I made a note. I said I knew Dabo would dabo. Yeah. I said this last week. when you get these coaches to their conference championships, and I have on the Georgia game on my notes here that Kirby. So it's it's the Saban. It's just when you get these guys in these big moments, unlike Coach Matt Campbell, these guys will. I just and I've said this multiple times in games, and I've been wrong this year too, and I've said it before, but it's just when you get them in these big games, it's I kept saying I can't see them not having their guys ready to do. And this game, by the way, this was a total pick'em game. I mean, anyone could have won this game at this point. Obviously, Clemson came back and they got that last second field goal, but it was you could see both teams watching that game. You could see both teams winning this game, both SMU earlier on and then Clemson at the end. But it also doesn't help when you let Cade Klubnik have a virtually perfect game either. 4 touchdowns, no picks, and 262 in the air. I mean, it's that's a pretty standard game for a good quarterback, right? But to virtually make no mistakes. And granted, Kevin Jennings still had a great game too. I think he had over 300 with 2 touchdowns and a pick or something like that.
Three TDs and a pick.
Okay, there you go. But I think overall it was a great game. I mean, obviously, the only thing that separated was that field goal. So, arguably, between the Clemson, SMU, and the Georgia and Texas game, that was probably the best game to watch this past week.
I mean, Penn State, Oregon was not expected. What we had expected. Yeah, we'll get there. But man, it was such a good game.
So I have to apologize. I have to apologize to my Penn State fans, whoever, if there are any out there. But
so, yeah, they SMU, the way they were able to. Obviously, they had faced a lot of turmoil early on in the game, but 2 turnovers early in the game. And Cade Klubnik was playing great in the first half. Most of his yards came in the first half because the SMU defense, they stood up in the second half, allowing only 10 points.
But still, when you're not making the mistakes, right? When you have a guy like Cade Klubnik still throwing 4 touchdowns, no pick, you can score 10 points in the second half, but as long as you're not letting the other team capitalize off your turnovers.
Yeah. And that was the thing is, SMU, when they got the ball, they were having to go all the way down the field. And they are moving it. I mean, SMU, they put up 450 yards of offense in this game. And I thought Rhett Lashley, he did a good job adjusting. Clemson D-line was dominating SMU's offensive line early on. It was clear, clearly when you're watching the game, you're like, okay, there's a gap there. Obviously a gap in talent, but he was able to adjust for that. I think what's kind of crazy about this game, I didn't even realize it as I was watching it. Clemson didn't have a penalty in this game. No turnovers, no penalties.
Man. People can say what they want about Dabo or Kirby or Sark or whoever, but I mean, when you're coached by these guys, if they get their guys ready for a big game, you know what happens.
And I felt for the ponies, man, because they had all the momentum. They had all the momentum.
They did, but I still think and obviously we saw with the official playoff bracket, they showed that they belong, though.
Yeah, that was the thing is, early on it looked like, oh my, it looked like, hey, Alabama's in, SMU's done. It was but the way SMU was able to rally in that second half, lead.
Did I say Clemson rallied in the second half?
I don't think so, no.
Okay. Well, if I did, I meant the opposite.
Yeah. SMU rallied in the second half, the way they were able to come back and but hey, shout out to the Clemson kicker, man. Absolute nails on the 55-yard attempt. With that kind of pressure on, you gotta think, you can look at a playoff spot is on the line on that kick. And this dude who's, he's having to kick a 55-yarder. Absolute nails. So got to give kickers, I don't really think they get enough props for kind of moments that they have to come into. So, yeah, I just want to give a shout-out to him there. And Yeah, overall, SMU showed they belonged. They showed they belonged in the field, which we'll touch on a little bit later. Do you have anything else on the ACC championship?
No, I ultimately just wanted to talk about Dabo having his guys ready, Cade Klubnik, and then Kevin Jennings still playing a good game. Yeah, I think earlier I did say Clemson came back, but I meant SMU. I'm looking at the box score now.
Yeah.
I was like,
SMU or Clemson jumped out on them early, and then SMU was able to rally. See, you got me doing it now.
I know. Anyway.
So moving on to the Big Ten championship, Penn State versus number 1 Oregon. Oregon ended up winning 45-37, and what we all figured, was going to just be a shootout. No, I'm kidding. That was that was not what I expected at all in this game. You hadn't seen the Penn State offense do that. But hey, if you're a betting line man for James Franklin, Vegas is still loving you because James Franklin, he doesn't miss. If he's supposed to win, he'll win the game. If he's supposed to lose,
he's going to lose.
He's going to lose it. Does this one thing I was watching? This Penn State team being able to do this to Oregon, when you hadn't really seen Penn State do this to many teams this year, especially the better teams that they've played. Does this raise some question marks for you about Oregon's defense, or do you think it's just kind of the style of game that it fell into?
No, not at all. That doesn't raise any questions. Actually, I made a note of this. Based on watching, I have watched a good amount. I'll say a few. I'll say more than a few because a few means 3. I've watched a good amount of Oregon games this year, and it feels like no matter how low scoring or how high scoring the game is, they're just gonna always score more points than you. Which obviously you can say, well, duh, they're 13-0, they've scored more points than everybody. But my point is, see the Wisconsin game, see the Ohio State game, see the Penn State game, see the Boise State game. Like, no matter how many points you score, Wisconsin was very low scoring. They're just going to make sure that they score more than you, no matter what. And so Penn State scoring 37 in a Big Ten championship, that's supposed to win you a game, right? If you score 30 points in any game, you're supposed to win the game. But Oregon's just always going to score more points than you, and and obviously they're the favorite to win the whole thing. But it's just what it feels like. Like, yeah, Boise State, you could say, well, they could have won that game, they should have won that game, whatever. But they didn't, because Oregon just went down at the end when they needed to and kicked a game-winning field goal. Wisconsin was keeping it close all game against them, and would they end up winning that game like 20 to? I
think it was 16-13.
Something like that, right? So it was like the low scoring, but they just made sure at the end that they scored more points than Wisconsin. Ohio State, where it was, 35-33. They didn't let Ohio State at the end score that field goal.
32-31.
So,
yeah.
It's like,
they rise up in big moments. Yeah.
No matter what you do against Oregon, they're just, at the end, they're going to make sure that they score. If it is even close, they're just going to make sure to score more points. And no matter what you do, no matter what scheme you have. And that's just what it seems right now. So we'll see in the playoff. But so with that, as I was going to say, I'll be the first to say Penn State played a really good game. I said that they didn't belong in the same field. Penn State showed that they could play with Oregon, which is a big deal, right? But nonetheless, right, they didn't win. So, but I as a Penn State fan, I would feel pretty good about going in the playoffs right now, seeing that game.
Yeah, I think you're just waiting on the line to drop for whether or not they're going to be favored in their matchup, and if they are,
I mean, they have a home game, so
yeah. And I imagine they're probably going to be favored against SMU, so seems like they'll probably have them ready. And
yeah, if they're favored, they're good. They're going to win.
They're in good shape. But yeah, I don't know, because I wonder what a team like Oregon is going to be able to do whenever they face a team like possibly Texas or maybe Tennessee, or possibly even Georgia. One of these teams that's very comparative with them, at least on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, you got to think Penn State put up 523 yards of offense, and
so
almost 300 of it on the ground.
So that was another thing I was going to say after you saying that. To my argument's point was that they actually outgained Oregon 523 to 469, but Oregon still was it. Like it's you shouldn't be losing games scoring 37 points in a game and with 523 yards of total offense, right? And we could say, well, I'm concerned about Oregon. Well, yeah, we were concerned about Oregon after week 2 when they were 2-0, barely beating Idaho, an FCS team, and Boise State, and giving up 4 sacks a game then. But, I mean, here we are. They're 13-0, the only undefeated team left, the number 1 seed in the playoff, first-round bye. And I'll get to this later when we talk about the bracket, but possibly the hardest, arguably the hardest route to the playoff is Oregon's 1 seed spot. But it's owed to the coaching too, Dan Lanning. But that defense is bend don't break to an extent, right? Like they'll still give up yards, but then when the offense is needed, they got all the athletes on that side just in case that they need them. So,
yeah, we'll see. I mean, I know they have, obviously they have Dylan Gabriel. He's 5th, 6th year. I lose track. I think he's 5th. I think he's in his 5th year. 5th year quarterback. So he's seen it all. You're not going to really get him. The moment's not going to be too big for Dylan Gabriel. It's just whether or not they're going to be able to, play themselves and keep them in them games, or keep themselves in these games coming up and be able to score late like they have been doing, or be able to make the big play at the end. When you start playing these Texas, these Georgias, even Ohio State gets another crack at them. It's kind of, sometimes I wonder about the, same, method that we talked about with Miami all season. It's like, how long do you play with fire before you actually get burned? How long do you win these close games? We'll see. But right now, I mean, you can't really fault them. They're 13-0. Just that feat alone is impressive, regardless of, strength of schedule or anything. To get your guys to show up and play winning football 13 weeks is just impressive alone.
Yeah, so, I agree. 100%.
Dan landing there. All right, you ready to dive into the SEC championship? Which I was actually surprised by this, the first SEC championship to go to overtime. I heard that stat and I was like, it kind of caught me off guard. I think at least one of them had. But yeah, Georgia ended up winning 22-19 versus Texas. And Monty, we're going to let you go ahead and start on this one. What you got?
Well, speaking of the whole bend don't break thing, it's kind of Georgia's thing this year, I guess. Maybe Kirby's thing. It's like even when they played Alabama, yeah, they lost, and so technically you could say they broke, but it was like they got to this point where you're stretching the freaking the stick this much, and you're like,
it's the grip sticks, like the bend.
Well, no, like if you were to take a big old stick and bend it, and it's like starts to. It's like they never really break. And man, against Texas, they don't. And like I said earlier, I made the note Kirby, and the Dogs win another SEC championship. So here we are, right? Talking about, Texas's first year in the SEC, they're looking like the SEC favorite, which, most would say that they were the SEC favorite, maybe even going into the season and then throughout the season, because Georgia had slipped up a couple times, but
they're even the favorite in this game.
Yeah, but here, Texas was the favorite in this game, in Atlanta of all places. But yeah, I mean, here we are. Georgia's got another SEC championship. Kirby's got another SEC championship. It's like Georgia's run game is like Texas's kryptonite. Like Texas's defense is arguably the best defense in the entire country, but it's like whenever Georgia specifically wants to run the ball against them, that they can at will. I saw a stat today. Trevor Etienne and Georgia's kicker. Golly, what's his name? I got it right here. Woodring. So Etienne and Woodring are the only two people on Georgia to score points against Texas in both games. This year, they're the only two to score points. Carson Beck didn't. Gunnar Stockton didn't. None of the other Georgia running backs have. It's only been Etienne and that Woodring, the kicker. And so it's like that's literally Texas's kryptonite this year is the Georgia run game. They beat pretty much everybody else. Actually, they literally beat everybody else, but they can't beat Georgia and they can't beat the run game. But the one thing I will say, though, I was impressed with Gunnar Stockton's kind of game management. He didn't do anything special. He had 71 yards passing and 0 touchdowns and a pick. But the way that he managed the game when Carson Beck went out and he got smoked on that one play, I thought he was
dumb. I thought his head was in the helmet for a second.
Did you see the picture of him on the ground?
No, I didn't.
It was like this. Oh, dude, you got to see that picture. He's got like his leg back in like a hurdle position, but he's on the ground. His eyes were rolled in the back of his head.
Yeah.
Oh, it was nasty, but it was a nasty hit.
Dude, it was
not saying illegal necessarily. I won't speak on that, but it's just a nasty hit.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, to the point, like he was able to manage the game with Beck out enough, and then the run game, for whatever reason, against Texas of all teams, it always works. Only against Texas. And they were able to pull it out, man.
And I think this game has highlighted more about Texas's miscues. I mean, the opportunities that Texas had in the red zone against Georgia early on, to where they weren't able to execute, whether it be missed field goals or whatever ended up happening.
That was a big one too for Texas.
And I think that was really more the summary of this game is, some reason Texas was not able to execute. And that's kind of why, after this game, there's been some question marks about whether or not you should see more Arch Manning over Quinn Ewers, just because whenever you do get those red zones, whenever you get the QB run game, which obviously we've seen.
Well, and there's some portal rumors about Ewers if he doesn't go to the league, but I digress.
Yeah, but and I think the argument is valid, right? Whenever you're having offensive struggles, especially in the red zone, it helps you out whenever you have a quarterback that can run the way Arch Manning can, because it gives you a +1 in the run game. I mean, I now have an extra blocker. We're always going to have a numbers advantage running the ball against a lighter box.
Here, let me ask you this, and take your Oklahoma fandom out of this for a second. Let me ask this.
I'll try.
If you were to be, and I know you can never fathom this, but just humor me.
Okay.
If you were a Texas fan, is Quinn Ewers going to be the guy to win you a national championship this year?
No. He's not going to be the guy to win it for you.
Okay.
That's my point. My point with Quinn Ewers has always been the same.
Second question, this is the follow-up question to that. So based on that answer, is Quinn Ewers or Arch Manning your guy this year to win you a national championship? Are you going to win a national championship this year with either of them?
Probably not.
Okay. That's all.
Well, it's like I said earlier in the season, whenever we were talking about it, they brought up Quinn Ewers was like a third person for the Heisman. And, of course, it always comes off, I sound like a hater. I think Quinn Ewers is good. I don't think Quinn Ewers is elite. He won't be the reason you win the game. He won't be the reason Texas wins the national championship. But I'm not saying he's going to be the reason they lose it. You know what I mean? So
right, and that's what I'm asking is he capable of being the guy to elevate your team to win a national championship this year as the starting quarterback? Because like my opinion, I'll say that Arch Manning can Arch Manning probably win Texas a national championship at some point? Yeah, probably, but not this year. And so it's like if I were like Quinn Ewers, basically, because I was early on in the season, I said Quinn Ewers was like one of my favorites to win the Heisman personally, based on how he played against Michigan. He played lights out, which
Alabama
we found
game
out
last year.
Right. And so I was like, yeah, there's no reason why I thought Quinn Ewers was that guy to win them a national championship. But, I know like a lot of Texas fans are like, if they were to be honest with themselves, because he's your guy in the playoff now, so you got to roll with him probably. Unless he has some absolute disaster of a game against Clemson and then they somehow pull it out, like then they might put Arch in. But you have to be honest with yourself as a Tex fan now. It's like, do you actually genuinely believe Quinn Ewers is going to be the guy if Texas needs to win a national championship this year? If they are to win it, is he your guy? And I don't have an opinion on it, but I feel like Texas fans have to be honest with themselves and be like, well,
yeah,
maybe not this year.
Yeah, I don't. Like I said, I just don't think he elevates the team. I don't think Texas very well could win a national championship, but I don't think you're going to look back on that game and be like, man, Quinn Ewers, he's the only reason they won it. He took them to this. That's just not who he is as a player. That's not who he's shown to be. Texas has shown that they can show up, and as long as they don't beat themselves, and they can play lights out, and they can run the ball, they can be a very balanced football team, and Quinn Ewers can manage the game, and they can win the game that way. Heck, they probably would have won this game if they were able to execute in those red zone opportunities. But obviously, whenever the field tightens up, they work. Red zone, tighter windows, safeties are closer to the ball, harder to run the football. There's a lot of things that kind of play into the red zone being more difficult. And that's where, a quarterback being an elite playmaker helps out in the red zone. And Arch Manning, I think, has a little bit more of that playmaker in him. Obviously, from just the small little bits that you've seen, he's shown that ability. But
I think that helps. I think the scrambling ability helps a lot with that. Because if you have a quarterback, a Manning, which is crazy to say, but if you have a quarterback that in the red zone can be another factor on the ground, that's ultimately going to score you more points than a quarterback that's not, as mobile in the red zone or in general, but especially in the red zone.
You got anything else on the SEC championship, brother?
Nope. Just that Georgia on top again.
How about them dogs? That's my final note on it. How about them dogs? All right, let's go ahead and move on. Let's hit the 12-team playoff. Y'all, I'm just going to read it from y'all 1 through 12, but I'll do it as their games, kind of as they're seeded for y'all, okay? So the 4 teams getting a first-round bye are starting with number 1, Oregon, number 2, Georgia, number 3, Boise State. How about the Broncos? And number 4, Arizona State, Sun Devils. Which, hey, say what you want. I don't know. Did you ever watch that video? Did you ever see the video of the Arizona State mascots fighting?
This year?
Yeah, this year.
Yeah, I saw it.
Sun Devil pieced him up there.
It's a much more nimble suit. That Sun Devil.
It probably is that.
Much more nimble suit.
So, and when we go to the actual games, they're going to be played first. We got number 12 Clemson taking on number 5 Texas for a chance to play Arizona State. We got number 9 Tennessee taking on Ohio State at the Shoe for a chance to play number 1 Oregon.
Brutal draw for the Vols, man. Brutal draw.
Following that, there's number 11 SMU taking on number 6 Penn State for a chance to play Boise State. So a real good opportunity there, maybe for Penn State. We'll see. And then we have number 10 Indiana taking on number 7 Notre Dame for a chance to play Georgia.
I really like that matchup.
That's a good matchup.
I saw you had a note on it, so I'll let you speak on it mostly. But I really like. State of Indiana, right? So it's like a quasi rivalry without realizing that, because Indianans, Midwest, they never really were rivals because they never really played each other. Maybe historically they might have, I don't know, maybe before our time, but Midwest, they always get along, and then now they got to play each other in a playoff setting, and they're like, wait, why have we never been rivals?
Yeah,
I don't know. I can't speak on it. Don't know too many Notre Dame and Indiana fans, but
the friend of my friend is now my enemy.
It's a cool matchup, and it'd be. Yeah. I hope it is close, because that's a fun matchup. I like that one.
Yeah, and so obviously we're not going to give y'all any kind of big predictions. We're going to break that down for y'all the week these games are played.
Yeah,
where we're actually going to get predictions on them. A couple things that I just wanted to touch on. I put this note obviously before the thing came out, but with the way the Clemson SMU game finished, if SMU was out, I think that was wrong. Obviously, the debate was, obviously it comes around down to the 12th spot, right? And it really boiled down to two teams, whether or not it was Alabama in, with a 9-3 record, or it was 11-2 SMU. And I don't know personally how you felt about it, but I think the way SMU played, especially it being in a conference championship, it being an extra game, I think that's kind of what swayed the committee to end up going with SMU there.
Yeah, I mean, I made a note, and because of obviously how vocal I've been about how inconsistent the committee's been and my complaints here and there about the committee did get this right, SMU over Bama. Whether you think, because Saban was going on and on about it without actually saying the teams he was talking about, about how Bama should have been in over SMU. It's don't lose 3 games, and it's not even that, because Ole Miss actually had the better resume over Bama. I mean, if you look at the resume, but had the committee left SMU out and put Bama in, because Bama was the first out, had you put Bama in over an 11-2 SMU team who lost a conference championship, the precedent you're setting for that, it's like, why? So if that were to happen, say that did happen, right, hypothetically, and I know I don't like to speak on hypothetical, but just humor me. If that were to happen, and the exact same year next year happened, everyone had the same record, everyone got the same seeding, everything was boiling up to the same conference championships, everything. As SMU, I would opt out, as the whole team, I would opt out of the conference championship. I'd stay at an 11-1 team, not be penalized for my loss in the conference championship, and I'd go in to the playoff, because they were already the 8th seed going in prior to, or they were number 8, but they were the 3 seed or something like that.
Yeah.
So obviously
favored to win the championship, but yeah.
Right. So if they opted out, they forfeit whatever they wanted to say, then they would probably stay at that 8th seed, and the 8th ranking, sorry, not seeding, and they would move back a little bit, but they'd still be in. Like, I would just opt out. So that's why I agree with this decision to keep them in, because it would have set a precedent to I'll just have my team opt out of the conference championship, because I don't want to get penalized for losing in the conference championship. You shouldn't.
Yeah.
Even if they lost 31-14 against Clemson, they were still the more qualified team, record-wise. And people would be, but don't, it goes back to don't lose 3 games in the regular season. Don't get beat down by 6-6 Oklahoma team 24-3.
Garbage Oklahoma team. And that's kind of my argument. Everybody's like, well, Alabama, they had this brutal straight schedule, and it's like, if you put them on, a field with SMU, they blow SMU out. It's like
hypothetical. You don't know that.
And they're like, everybody's like, well, we don't want to see SMU get in, because we just don't want to see them get blown out. It's like, if Oklahoma blew this Alabama team out, what makes you think they're going to go into Happy Valley and not, you don't think Penn State has the potential to blow them out after they just put up 500 yards of offense on Oregon?
Because Penn State would be favored.
Dangerous game plan.
And you know what that means.
James Franklin giving you the wood. That's what that means.
No, but I mean, the only argument that in the past that I would give out, so if Alabama was coached by Nick Saban at 9-3, which they would never go 9-3 with him, of course, but if they did, that would be a good argument, because if the Bama team that they have now with the athletes that they have currently, if they were coached by Saban and went into Happy Valley, I would probably pick Alabama to win that game. But they're not. So it doesn't matter. And that's all hypothetical. So yeah, I think the committee got this one right. They were treading some dangerous water, but they got it right. So that part of the committee I do agree with. Yeah,
and like I said, I'm not saying that I'm not saying that to have the discussion is unreasonable, right? I think the discussion needs to be had, but I think they came to the right conclusion, if that makes sense.
Yeah, don't lose 2 games.
Yeah, exactly. One other thing, I just had a note on it. Do you think it's good for Arizona State to have a bye week here? I know it's kind of a hypothetical, obviously
Say that one more time, sorry.
Do you think it's good for Arizona State to have a bye week here? Obviously, they're one of the hottest teams coming into the playoff. Do you think they would rather keep playing, or would they rather probably, like I said, I think they still have the opportunity to lick their wounds and kind of get healthier a little bit.
Yeah, it's an opportunity to get healthy. I think they're what they got to play Texas or Clemson, right? So it's like,
yeah, you want to be as healthy as you can be as Arizona State team going in that.
So those 2 teams, we know what Clemson is in the playoffs, and this is a Sark coach Texas team. You want to be as healthy as you can. Yeah, you could make the argument that, hey, stay hot if you keep playing, but they still have this week off, right? So it's like they're still taking a break. It's just an extra long break, and I got no opinion on it. It is what it is. That's the price of being the conference champion, right? So
yeah. So obviously we'll deep dive into these matchups a little bit more as we get closer to those games actually being played. Give y'all some predictions for them, but we just want to give y'all a quick rundown where everything ended up falling in. So Jim got a question for you. We haven't discussed this off air. So we're going to keep our record prediction. Does it go throughout the entire season? Where we're at?
It should. I need to go back a couple weeks because I didn't put mine in there a couple times.
Yeah,
so
we'll get
way
it
behind you, but
we'll get it updated here. Let's go ahead and roll on to our.
So I had a couple things to say.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. No, it was really the and I won't even mention the one thing because it was the Ohio State Tennessee thing, but I don't want to harp on that, so I won't even mention that.
You want to talk about it, or you want to say it?
No, not that. I just wanted to say that I was excited for the overall matchups of the playoff. I think that overall, I mean, that's what we like about the expansion was the matchups. But the only complaint was the design of the seating. I think we're seeing it first year. Not gonna complain. It's first year, but yeah, Oregon having a harder path as the 1 seed than Georgia as the 2 seed, and you can even make the argument that Boise State has the easier path to the championship than Oregon does. It's like the 1 seed, like you see, like the 1 seeds in the NCAA championship, the March Madness brackets. The 1 seeds always play the 6th, and you play the easier teams, and then there's regions of four 1 seeds, right? Total. There's 4 regions, and then there's like a easier region than this one and that one. This is like, here's Oregon, and they either got to play Ohio State or Tennessee in the Rose Bowl, and then if they win that one, then they got to play probably Texas or Clemson. Not ruling Iowa or Arizona State out, but
I think Arizona State would have a real shot at. If Clemson beats Texas, I think Arizona State might have a
better shot. Yes.
Yeah.
But you can make that argument. But it just overall, if you do the playoff as only the favorites winning,
okay,
Oregon has the harder path to the championship than Georgia and arguably Boise State does.
Yeah. I guess my question is,
or Penn State even maybe.
So
because they would play Boise State.
I guess the argument you're saying, would you rather Oregon and Arizona State swap spots? Is that kind of what you're going for there?
There or down at, and I say down at the bottom because I was looking at the bracket let me pull the bracket up. Give me a sec. There we go. So all you had to really do, which this people are like, oh, you got to get Boise State, but you switch Oregon and Boise State, that would make sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I get you. I think they're just...
And maybe it's just because Arizona State is the Big 12, but it's like, I don't know. I mean, man, Oregon just got a tough draw with Tennessee and Ohio State, really. Compared to Boise State with SMU and Penn State, and then obviously Georgia with Indiana and Notre Dame, and then they go on. Georgia would have to play, assuming Georgia won, they would have to play either SMU, Penn State, or Boise State. Georgia's looking pretty good.
It's tough. It's tough not to think Georgia might get there. even if Carson Beck can't come back from that injury he suffered in the game, which we didn't even touch on in that game. Yeah, I mean, we mentioned that Gunnar Stockton played the second half. But Carson Beck did come in and hand the ball off to, get Georgia. Was it they got him to overtime there?
Somebody rang my doorbell. Sorry.
Yeah, it happens. It happens. Anything else on the college football playoff?
No, that was really it. That was just the seeding stuff. But it's overall, I will say, committee did a good job with the overall the ending, the final bracket.
Yeah, I think so. They did pretty good. Let's roll on. We got America's game, Army Navy, only game of the weekend. We have one prediction for y'all. And
all right, you say your choice on 3. 1, 2, 3. Army.
Yeah. I think it's tough not to go with Army. I mean, we can look at common opponents. I mean, this Army team, they've only lost to Notre Dame, which Notre Dame's in the playoff, right? If you look at a common opponent of like Tulane, right, which I think Tulane, the Green Wave, I think they were a real good team this year. Army beat them 35-14. Navy lost to them 35-0. I think the Army's just playing a little bit better, triple option offense there. I think, but like I said, this game is. I mean, it's always something exciting. I believe Army is home on this one.
They play.
They play a neutral site.
Yeah, I think so. It's in. Where is it?
It's in Landover, Maryland.
Is it Maryland or is it Philly or something? I don't know. But yeah, it is. It's a neutral site. I'm pretty sure. But no, this game, of course, it's probably gonna be like a 17-10, 24-10, 24-13, 24-14 final, probably, or a 13-10, a 7-3. This game is always a toss up. Going back to last week, I had mentioned this. The committee started using this, and this is what I always try to go by when looking at teams and Army's body of work of the season. And yeah, you could argue strength of schedule, but they both have kind of weak strength of schedule.
Yeah.
But Army's body of work is better than Navy's body of work all season. And Navy kind of fell off towards the end. Army was kind of, other than the Notre Dame game, they really have been dominant all season. And like I said, Army's only flaw was Notre Dame. Navy's lost to Tulane, like you said. Army's pretty handily beat Tulane. Like, if you want to go like opponents, which this year, you could argue doesn't mean anything, but I'm going with Army. I'm not picking a score. I'm not picking, if there is a line, I'm not taking it. I'm not taking spread at all.
6.5 is technically what Army's favored by in this one.
And they could end up beating the hell out of them. Who knows? And Navy could end up winning. I don't know. But I'm taking Army.
Either way, America's the winner in this one, regardless of the outcome.
100%.
100%. But yeah, both got to go with Army here. Both got to go with Army over Navy here. I think Navy's playing some good ball. I just think in the games they played their toughest opponents, they just haven't been able to kind of match. And great, I mean, I'm going to be watching this one closely because Oklahoma's got Navy in a bowl game.
Oh, yeah.
That's real exciting for all Sooner fans.
Well, and that was the thing, too. I watched the first half of the Army-Notre Dame game, and Army didn't necessarily play, like, horrible. It was just Notre Dame because Notre Dame was the better, athlete-wise, the better team, and they would just get them in third and longs, and then, that neither Army nor Navy's offenses are designed for third and long. So.
No, it's built to run that offense you talked about a little earlier. 4 yards at a time, baby. We'll get down the field.
Hey, 4 yards play. It's all you need.
Yeah. Man, let's go ahead and roll on. We'll close out the show like we always do with our dubs and duds of the week. Obviously, we like to kick somebody in the nuts first off. So, Monty, who do you have as your dud of the week this week?
Yeah, so with my hot take, my my year-long hot take that I thought, was looking better and better there at the end. Man, my dud of the week is Iowa State and Coach Matt Campbell. It was like they did everything right. They had a couple speed bumps in the season, but they were able to get back based on a couple different things happening in the year. They were able to get back to the Big 12 championship, first time since I believe 2019, where they imploded against Oklahoma, and they get back, and it's Matt Campbell on a big stage again, and it's his Iowa State team on a big stage again, and just completely don't want to take anything away from ASU. They did nothing to stop ASU. They completely imploded with the turnover. I mean, the fumbles, the interceptions, the lack of adjustments in the second half. I mean, 45-19 is bad, and so it's just you get all the way there. You got to start wondering, man. Campbell needs to. He's probably starting to feel a little warmth under his ass on that seat.
See, that's one thing I wanted to ask you is because Mike Campbell kind of, after the season Iowa State had last year, we talked about it coming into the year, especially when you made your hot take. Matt Campbell was kind of already coaching on a hot seat, obviously with the way they played.
Iowa State fans were fed up last year, and this year kind of saved him. But it's like, and he won't get fired this year, right? But you got to start feeling that warmth because it's like now that Oklahoma and Texas are gone, and you just let a Pac-12 team win the Big 12, and it's like you Oklahoma State. And Baylor and TCU are like those four teams that are supposed to, the next up behind Oklahoma and Texas. But so it's like, at some point, when is it going to happen? When is it going to happen?
Win one. You got to win one. Bring a championship back to
1912 was the last one.
No.
So that's my dud of the week.
But, I mean, Rocco Beck, obviously, I haven't heard anything. Probably returning for him next year.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, it's
not a guarantee, but I bet on it.
Like I said, nothing's a guarantee nowadays with college football, especially with the way the transfer portal is. And we'll talk about it a little offset. I got some takes on it, but for my dud of the week, I had to go with Kalen DeBoer with missing the playoff in his first season, taking the reins over from Nick Saban for the Alabama Crimson Tide, and missing the playoff. A 12-team playoff. This isn't like, obviously Alabama didn't make it every year under Saban. Damn close to it. But whenever the playoff going from 4 teams to 12 teams getting in, and then you still missing the cut there.
I think Alabama missed it one time.
Yeah, that's what what comes to my head is them missing it once.
I think it's one time. With Saban, I think one time.
Where they were the 5th seed or whatever.
Yeah.
That's kind of what it boils down to me is, I mean, I had to go with Kalen DeBoer. I think Alabama fans are obviously not happy. After missing it. Brandon didn't get a little flack to maybe blame the playoff committee. Maybe. But at the end of the day, 9-3, I guarantee you the standard 3 years to down in Tuscaloosa. So yeah, that's why I had to go with Kalen DeBoer here.
Yeah, and that's my biggest thing is like, yes, as an Alabama fan, you've been spoiled for a very long time, but this is the normal thing when you, like, your coach obviously didn't get fired, he retired, right? I will say the greatest college football coach of all time retired, and so there's going to be a transition. The most important part is the next year and the year after that, and then so on and so on. Because it's once Kalen DeBoer's guys start coming in, right? You still have a lot of Saban's guys still there.
Mm-hmm.
So you got these athletes that are Saban at, but they're not Saban coached, and he still managed to get them to a 9-3 record. But yes, I agree with you. Alabama made it last year to a 14 playoff as Saban's last year, and then expanded 12, and he still missed. As an Alabama fan, you'd be like, "Oh, this," but it's not the end of the world. It's not.
No.
They were the first team out at 9-3. In his first year.
I don't think the sky is falling. However, I also think this has a lot to do with what college football is becoming with the transfer portal, what NIL has turned it into. I don't think we're built for the dynasty era as much as we had been before. I think it really depends on what you put together that year for your team. And that's like you said, I think that's going to be kind of coming to the disparity of it. All that being said, I still think the SEC is probably going to argue for a 16-team playoff, with 3 of theirs being just on the outside.
And I saw some today. It was, and I don't know his name, and I don't remember his name. It's Coastal Carolina's current head coach.
I saw it, yeah.
But he spoke about the basically the transfer portal and NIL and everything. It's like you're not building teams anymore, or you're not building you're not building programs anymore. You're building a team for the next year. Now, that's what it's come down to. Which, as like a growing up, fan of college football, it sucks to see, but it's you have arguments on both sides about the players. They're gonna want to set themselves up for success for the future, because the vast majority of these players are not going to play in the NFL. So how do I maximize myself, my name, my image, my likeness? How do I set up myself for max profit for myself to move on into my field, where I can invest in a company, start a company, do that stuff. So there's arguments on both sides. It's sad to see in college football specifically, but
yeah, maybe they'll get the range and we'll see what ends up becoming of it. Way out more off-season talk for y'all. Obviously, after the season finishes, Monty, let's go ahead and move on to our duds of the week. What you got?
So I talked about ASU last week. I'm pretty sure they were my dub last week.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going with Boise State and Arizona State, both getting first-round buys. I mean, I told you before we went live, Boise State was at like 3% chance to make the playoff, maybe 1%, and then Arizona State was less than 1% to make the playoff at the beginning of the season. Like, Arizona State's record last year was 3-9. This their head coach's first season as the head coach. Boise State went 9-4, I believe, 8-5, 9-4.
Yeah, I think
last season.
Yeah.
And you could say, yeah, Boise State had a better chance, but I mean, to go 12-1 with a first round bye in the first 12-team playoff, and you're not necessarily an underdog in your next game. They might be, but Arizona State getting a first round bye too as a Big 12 champion, first year from the Pac-12 after going 3-9 with a first year head coach. I mean, think about it. His players are the last coach's players that he recruited, and he went 3-9 with those guys, and then here he is turning around this team and going and making it to the playoff for a first round bye. I think it's very impressive on for both parties, Boise State and Arizona State, and props to them, especially being Boise State being a group of 5, and then Arizona State. I mean, yeah, Big 12's considered Power 4, but they're kind of like a Pac-12 on the outside looking in team, or it's the team that was built for the Pac-12 pretty much that just won the Big 12. So props to both of them. I think it's exciting. Whether they're because they're both in the quarterfinals. So whether they're first round gone, I mean, it's still impressive. Yeah, and it's something to build on for them.
Absolutely. And I mean, I don't know if you've seen some of the stuff that Kenny Dillon has been doing, but I think he's obviously setting himself up well, at least in public image wise, where he's encouraging his players. He's like, hey, if you're planning on going on the transfer portal, he's like, oh, sign up, whatever. You can still come play in the playoff with us. It's like, but you need to go ahead and get your name out. I'll help you out. We'll still get you in practice. I think that's obviously a good open-minded approach that, not a lot of coaches are taking. They're like,
yeah, you got to be with the times at this point. We were just talking about, like, it's arguably why Saban retired. Didn't want to do it, and that's okay. That's on him. It's not a bad thing or good thing. It's just the new era is what Dillingham is kind of diving into, and it seems in year one to be working to his advantage.
And speaking of new eras, for my dub of the week, I almost thought about going with UNC hiring Bill Belichick as their next head coach, University of North Carolina. Thought about going with it. Obviously, we'll have more to talk about it in the offseason there. But I think what Bill Belichick, at least that model, I don't know how much you've read into it, the model at least he put out, like a mini pro ball, is probably the future forward for college football. We'll see how it ends up working out. But I actually had to go with Clemson on this one. And Dabo Swinney, for a coach that has refused to adapt, still being able to get his team into the playoff. And I think you have to start to wonder. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just saying, I think you can start to wonder, I think it is a good thing for college football. A team that has, outside of the service academies, used the transfer portal less than anybody. And
they're hosting a Purdue Edge this weekend.
Yeah. So maybe Dabo's changing his ways, but
nonetheless,
as far as
impressive
the
this year.
team that is on the field this year, I just think that part of it's impressive. It's an old school team, and they're still showing able to get the job done. Just through coaching, high school recruiting, and developing those guys to get them in the playoff. Had to give a shout out to Dabo there, especially with the way their season looked for week one. Losing to Georgia, freaking 34-3.
Hell, what did we say about? It was like this Clemson team is not,
Yeah.
This is, is Dabo done? And everyone was saying this, is Dabo done? Oh, is Dabo washed? That Dabo's not what we thought he was. And everyone can say these things over and over about it. It was like last year. Clemson was supposed to be not all that, and they didn't make the playoff, but they still maintained a good season with DJ Uiagalelei, if I'm getting that name right, as the starting quarterback. Or was that 2 years ago?
That was 2 years ago. DJ played at Oregon State.
Still was able to do well with him then, but still last year it was supposed to be Clemson was done, Dabo was washed, they still had a good season. And then this season was, as after the Georgia game.
Yeah, everybody's like, oh,
30. Yeah. They weren't going to, there's no way this team was making the playoffs. Yeah, here we are, the ACC champs again. Similar to the Kirby Smart Georgia thing, winning the SEC again, despite everything. And
I just realized there's another hot take of yours that fell through. I just now realized that.
Which one?
You predicted that somebody new would win the ACC championship.
I did say that. I said Miami wasn't going to.
No, I thought you said somebody new. You didn't specify who, but you said somebody new. And Clemson ended up winning it again. SMU almost got it done for you, though. They almost did.
Well, either way, I think I also said Miami wasn't going to win it. But
I think you did. I think you did say Miami was not going to win it, which you were right on that.
Didn't even make it.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, no, it's definitely impressive what they've done towards the end of the season and still manage. Hey, look, they've looked sketchy in some games, but they still managed to do it. And here they are playing Texas and Austin. Next week?
Yep, next week. So, speaking of next week, Monty, you got anything you want to say on the outro of the show here?
I'm really excited to see how this 12-team playoff fares. Obviously, I spoke on the playoff a little bit earlier when we talked about it. Man, I love these matchups. You get like SMU getting to go to Beaver Stadium and see, they're doing a whiteout. They confirmed that.
Oh, did they?
By the way.
Okay, that's good.
Yes. Yep. So it's a whiteout. Penn State, Tennessee going to Columbus, night game. Finally, of course, they decide when Tennessee comes to town, they're going to do a freaking night game there. But then you hear about all the ticket sale rumors about Tennessee fans invading the shoe. We'll see what happens. But
they traveled well to Norman. I'll say that.
We do typically travel well. We keep bringing up I've been watching on X. A lot of Vol Twitter keeps bringing up the 2022 LSU game. We played them at 11 a.m. in Death Valley Tiger Stadium, I think is what it's called. And it was like 25,000 Tennessee fans or something like that. And people are saying, "Oh, this one's more popular." So, like I said, we'll see. Who knows? But I mean, all these matchups. Hell, Clemson, Texas, as we just talked about. I mean, that's going to be a very exciting game. Just a lot of great matchups. Indiana, Notre Dame. And then you get to the quarterfinal. Anyway, it's just a lot of stuff, good stuff, despite all the bad stuff happening in college football is happening. And I'm excited for this postseason. It's going to be crazy. We have a lot to talk about next,
couple months.
And so forth.
Yeah. We got some exciting games for the next month. And then after that,
don't get me started about the transfer portal and all that stuff. That stuff's going to be crazy. But the football side of it, dude, we got some exciting next couple weeks. But On to America's game.
On to America's game. With that being said, man, thank y'all for tuning in with us. Thank y'all for being with us. Obviously, we're getting this out kind of late Friday night. A little later than we wanted to, but, obviously with our schedules and stuff, it kind of conflicted this week. So, man, as always, subscribe to the show, subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on all our social medias. We're on X, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. Subscribe to us there. Set us up for notifications on your Spotify. Thank y'all for tuning in, man. And until next week, we'll catch y'all. Peace.